Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the CVO Live. I'm here with Vinny. Hello there, all the way from Ireland. Am I right?
That's right, Valentin, down the southwest coast.
Excellent. So, Vinny, please, why don't you do the introductions about yourself, because you know yourself better than everyone here.
I was hoping you'd spare me that one and at least give me a soft intro. As my little profile line says there, I'm a Ryan Reynolds fan. I just want to get that out in the open right now. I'm Vinny. I'm an e-commerce consultant. I'm nearly 20 years in e-com, I guess. I started working with eBay way back when they first went out to multi-channel, and my career has progressed quite a bit since then. Some people who are looking today might know me from LinkedIn, from the relentless, mind-numbing posts that I put out there. Unlike some people, I don't plan them as much as I'd like to. It's generally what comes to me each morning. But from an e-com perspective, I do a lot of work with retail. I've gone from operational retail and operational e-com right through to performance marketing. I think my views have changed quite a lot over the last 10 years, certainly last 5. And it's allowed me, I guess, to have some validation in the opinions I put out there. So look, I'm open to be questioned on them. I hope today that, you know, your point of view is incredibly strong. I sent your email to my email list yesterday, and it's the first time I think I ever got a response to my own emails. So your content clearly is better than mine. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is start copy.
Excellent. So, what I can say about you, Vinny, is that you are one of the rare people in the thought leaders in the e-commerce and retail space that is blending this, let's say, knowledgeable perspective from the technical side of things, and also has this customer-centric approach. And that's why I wanted you here in our episode of the CVO Live. So, to set the stage, the purpose of today's episode is to understand what are your, let's say, insights. What are your tips and tricks when it comes to customer centricity and improving the customer lifetime value? And the first question that I want to address you today is, what do you think about customer lifetime value as a metric? How important it is? Is this a vanity metric? Is this just an average? How do you see it from where you stand?
I'm very aware of my audience, so I'll be careful in how I put this across. No, I'm kidding. And look, I didn't say thank you for having me along. I'm genuinely humbled. So hopefully we do it justice. But on the idea of lifetime value, I think it's incredibly important, and it's only as important as we decide to place value on it. And I want to try and give a few examples, because listening back through some of your other guests, they've all got really interesting point of views. Looking at the audience that's listening, they're going to be in different parts of B2B or B2C or in services marketing. And what I'm going to try and articulate is customer lifetime value is as important as the value we put in it. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. In e-commerce, typically, we're trying to sell a product and get that first sale over the line. And then when we look at services marketing, we're actually trying to keep someone on the hook for a long time. And I always think about myself in terms of my Amazon Prime account. So Prime is a great example for me of a subscription service that's become a utility to my life. So I use it for music, I use it for audiobooks, I use it for Amazon Prime TV. I don't think any of those services I'd have bought as a standalone service. I like the fact that they're bundled together. I like the fact that every few months Amazon releases some new element of my subscription that's saying it's worth my 120 quid or whatever it's costing me per year. When I first signed up to it, I think it was £79 at the time. Now it's up to 120. I would imagine they could probably creep it up to about 150 without me ever having to take notice of the amount that I'm spending on it on a yearly basis because of how much I use it. And I haven't even talked about the primary purpose for why I bought it in the first place, which was to get parcel delivery, which is what I really wanted access to. But my decision on its value over time has kind of grown. When it comes to e-com, I kind of struggle a bit on the retail side, because we need to pay more attention to lifetime value, but we have to have a plan in place in order to earn the permission to get in front of a customer. And there's not many brands do it. And It's probably because we always think about that first sale. And one set of metrics that I've been working on loads over the last few months, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, was trying to equate the time factor of marketing spend to time between purchases and the lifetime over which we keep a customer. And I use a few tools to do that. So one of my headline strategies that I'm putting in place with a lot of clients right now is to say, well, if you have a relationship with a customer that can last up to 200 days, that gives you a pretty long window into which you can go and start trying to kind of put your value out to that customer over that 200 days. You might go in and look at your analytics and see that, you know, you're getting a second sale after 89, 90 days. That's still a pretty broad window. So if you can narrow that gap between first and second sale and get some value into your customer, be it about the product offering, how to use the product, some sort of middle of the road educational type content or use cases for it, I think that's where you start closing the gap. Why that's important is most of the conversations we have around analytics are within our e-com teams. And then if you go to bigger organizations, finance usually get involved. But there's a really disproportionate relationship between marketing spend and financial reconciliation, because, you know, that goes from a weekly to a monthly to a yearly cycle. If you're reducing the time between purchases, you're actually increasing your cash flow, which allows the discussion to go a little bit further and deeper so that you can start saying, well, actually, we're making our marketing more efficient, so we want you to invest even more in it because we're proving we can get more purchases from a customer more frequently. And from a customer point of view, you've got to do the follow-up then, and I haven't got to that point yet, but you've got to listen to the customer and talk to them and take action on that feedback that they give you to say why you've got a right then to go and get a third and fourth sale. So I think as I look through it, there's loads of things that we can learn from companies like Netflix and Spotify and Airbnb and these types of companies on how they market to us on an ongoing basis and how they get value across to us. So lifetime value for me is one of those emerging metrics that we've really got to start paying attention to. And the reason it's important to me is it allows you to have a discussion with your CEO, with your finance director, within the marketing team itself, and with agency partners alike. So it really talks about, in one sense, I know how people look at it, but it talks about the efficiency of your money and your investment.
Vinny, I think there are a lot of things that we should unpack over there. There are a lot of let's say very important aspects that you noted, but I'm gonna try to focus on this residual value which is happening from any customers, and the fact that there are many e-commerce leaders which are having this I don't know if it's stubbornness or simply ignorance or let's say negligence from their end, because they are neglecting the upside of their newly acquired customers. And I'm a bit, let's say, mind blown about how much money they are leaving on the table, and it's not like rocket science to do this type of calculation. And my question for you is, why do you think this is the status quo?
Ooh, there's something that struck me in some of the reading that I've been doing recently, that you rarely hear someone put up their hand and say, I've an idea for a business that's going to solve a customer problem. You generally hear, I've got a business idea I think can make work. So everyone is focused on that first sale. And we then automatically fall into the mode of creating a business in the way that we know traditional businesses to be made. If you look at the SaaS companies and the kind of service companies that I've talked about, the whole goal is to get as many customers on board as you can and to retain those customers, and then to repeat that process in multiple territories. So your core goal set is around acquiring and retaining customers. It's not just acquiring customers. Some of the reasons I think it's happened is that e-com teams are actually quite immature. So some of the reasons I feel that it's happening is we typically focus on that inbound journey. So our marketing team will be made up of people who are on the acquiring side. It'll be made up of an agency, but we don't have a skill set designed yet around retention marketing. And I think where we're going to start seeing that creeping through is on this increase into retail media. I think that the nature of the organization of e-com has got to change in order for us to get better at retention marketing. Some of the data that I've seen over the last few months from various partners has clearly indicated that regardless of territory, anywhere in the world, and regardless of revenue size of the business, from 2 million up to 100 million plus in terms of annual revenue, acquisition rates are dropping. So new customer acquisition rates are dropping almost right across the world. Cost of advertising is going up. So there's got to be an absolute focus in saying, well, how do we get more out of what we have? How do we satisfy that customer desire? So two things: we've got to start realigning the team structure to make that happen, and we've got to put in place those retention tactics and techniques to do that. In order to make that happen, we have got to ask our customers in the first place, why did they bother buying from us? And why would they bother buying from us the second time? And I think we've got to be brave and start asking those questions and get it out there. So a real simplistic example I can give you was 2 Christmases ago, between buying Christmas presents for myself and for friends, I think it was 42 purchases I made between November and December in 2021. By March 2022, I had only follow-up from 2 of those brands. One of the first things I do, which it sounds crazy, I did the same thing, bought a lot less this year for a lot less people. And by the way, when I'm saying I'm buying for people, I don't mean I'm buying for people. I mean, I'm buying on behalf of people, because that's my day job. So people tend to throw those little tasks to me and give me something to do during the day. But one of the really simple things I do on the way into work with a client is I mystery shop them. So I go through that process of trying to find a product, trying to purchase it simply. I go through the unboxing process to see, did they tell me what my next purchase is going to be about? And the really important part is, what's the follow-on communication? So for that 30 days after the purchase, did they say thank you? Did they introduce me to the brand? Did they ask me for a review on the product? Did the service live up to the expectation that I set out? Even if it's a slow service, ask me, did it live up to that expectation? So I think we've really got to start repositioning the culture, the teams, and the tactics that we're starting to invest in to start realizing that residual capital. Because as you said, if we were standing in a warehouse and there was a pallet with money on it, we're not going to walk by it. We're going to say, who left that money there?
So it's so, let's say, it's like a sport, right? So you are seeing this type of brands which are not practicing, right? They are not leveling up their e-commerce game, and of course, on one hand we have top performers, because there are some outstanding companies out there which are customer centric, leaving aside Amazon and their Amazon Prime and their all these stats that one single customer that has Amazon Prime has a lifetime value which is 30 times bigger than the lifetime value of any other retailer out there. So leaving these statistics aside, we are seeing that this is like a sport and people are not getting it. I mean, we have e-commerce and retail leaders which are not getting that there is a cap on the number of customers that they can acquire. And if you spoil your chances, right? When you are acquiring a customer, if you don't follow up, if you don't ask if they, I don't know, are those shoes fitting you? Are you happy about the coffee? Are you happy about the creams we've just sent you? And if you don't do this, then you will going to be running out of new customers to acquire. But I think this is a thing which is coming from the mindset that acquisition marketing is all that matters, and you can ruin your chances because there are more customers that you can acquire.
But we already prove we care about it, because you talk to any founder or CEO, particularly in growing brands, if they get a negative comment on Facebook or Instagram, the first thing they want to do is remove it. So we're aware of, we're aware that people are giving us feedback, positive or negative, yet we only choose to do stuff with things that affect us personally, rather than trying to do something structurally with all the amazing feedback that we could be getting from people and doing something with it. So it's not that we don't pay attention to it, we just choose to ignore it. I go back to the structure of e-com teams. I think it's going to evolve dramatically over the next 3 or 4 years, or at least those people who get it are going to do something with it. There was a great example during the pandemic of a brand that I thought was all kind of fronting itself, which was Gymshark. And you hear a lot of great things about them and how they're full on customer. But Noel Mack, their head of brand, was on a webinar that I was on very early in the pandemic. And he said that one of the things they noticed at the very beginning was people still wanted to work out but couldn't go to their gym, and they started empowering their influencer network to put together content sequences that they could release through their network, and we're doing it for free and paying them affiliate fees and all the things that you do with a community to give a little bit back. But again, after about 3 weeks of being in that position, they realized very quickly through social listening, and that wasn't through some fancy tools, it was through reading comments and looking at feedback that people were giving and conversations that were happening, to say, our mental health is suffering because we're stuck at home now. We need to do something about our mental health. And all of a sudden they realized that by providing access to mental health supports or talking about mental health, they were able to open up a brand new customer base that expanded a brand that was very narrow on gym gear into this idea of lifestyle. And it also opened them up to branching into other categories of clothing. So by getting into this kind of customer mindset and being centric around the needs of the customer, it presents so many opportunities for you if you're prepared to take action. I think that's the really key thing, Valentin, that we've got to take the time to listen, but then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. And Vinny, I have to touch on something which you've stated on your LinkedIn. By the way, I love your content. You've stated that there are these KPIs which we are following. I mean, things like, I don't know, ROS, and we are stubborn looking at the spend and the revenue, and also we are not looking at the customer behavior things like you've stated there. What is the time between the purchases? What is the lifetime value? And I want to touch on your approach on this. Of course, I'm completely obsessed about these kind of things, and it's like I'm when I see your content and when I see content from other thought leaders which are getting this, is like a breath of fresh air. Like, I'm not alone here. It's not like I'm shouting in the desert alone.
Well, fanboy alert. The first time I really got into it was when Reveal was released. Okay, so you're responsible for all my content now. So anyone who wants to give out about my content, you're to blame. But I loved how you presented the idea of customer segments, about the relationship status, which, you know, when Facebook first came out, we were all familiar with what that meant. So it was a generational thing. But I love the idea that you presented the customer status to us by, I think it was lover, soulmate, in a crisis, about to leave you, not a chance of a kiss. That reminds me of my school days. But that really got me hooked on the idea of saying, well, how do we get closer to this information, and how do we utilize it? The metric there for me is not one singular thing. It's about saying, okay, well, we've all these clusters of customers who are in a different frame of mind to where I'm at now, trying to sell them my latest new product launch. So I've almost got to reverse it. And where I find myself today, having come on, I think Reveal was released in 2018, maybe 2019. It's actually taking those segments, and I'm at the point now where I'm starting to pause other outbound campaigns and saying, why don't we let segments do the talking? So we take our segments, we sync them with our marketing tools, be it our email platform, our ads platforms, whatever that might be. And we create customer clusters in there, and we start working outwards. So rather than this idea of acquisition marketing, we take the retained pools of customers we have and we start sweating them. We start making them work harder for us, and we put them through the automation platforms that are now there. So for me as a small team, or for working with small teams, this is really useful because it's taking the thinking power out of it. So what are the metrics specifically that I look at? Relationship length. So how long can I justifiably have a customer on my email list, or whatever list I have it on, that I can expect that they will give me another piece of revenue. I look at that. I look at the time between purchases. So how frequently are people purchasing from me, and then how much has gone into the basket, and how much can we provide for them in terms of upselling, and they're the sorts of metrics that we're now getting into. What that leads me to is a layer up from that. So if you're in a bigger organization, that might not be enough for you. So the kind of long-term metrics that I'm looking at here, and I've talked about it briefly, is that there's got to be an efficiency ratio application to this. So if we're told that we can spend 10% of our overall revenue budget on marketing, within that 10% now, we can start measuring the allocation of it. So if we know that post-Christmas, we should be in full-on retention mode, we allocate our budget proportionate to that. So we might go in and start saying we're going to do all of our retention marketing there. knowing that in spring we got new product launches, we're going to come out of it. All the while you're looking at those narrow metrics of relationship time, time between purchase, and amount spent. They're the sort of metrics that I think can start making that spend side more efficient. And it brings finance teams along, because what you're recognizing is saying, we know we're going to spend money this month, but 12 months ago, we didn't know when we were going to get that money back into the business. Now we're actually setting ourselves a task to say we want to reduce time between those purchases, because we recognize that cash flow is really important to our business this year. So we're not shying away from the reality of the commercial side of our business, but we want to get better at the retention side. That's one side of it. A lot of us don't really put a lot of, maybe faith is the wrong word, but we don't put a lot of credibility around net promoter score type metrics. And you've touched on Amazon. Amazon to me is fascinating. Having grown up in marketplace world, there's so many people who think they're going to grow a brand by not adhering to the type of strict metrics that Amazon put in place for service. So when I get a client, we get them onto Amazon. The key thing for us is about those service metrics. Can you meet Amazon on their own platform, and can you replicate that through your own platform as well, or your direct channels? They're the sorts of things to me that are really making an impact this year.
Yeah, I totally agree, Vinny. And to open up another conversation, Pat, the customer experience, it's so important. Everyone talks about it. Everyone says, yes, it's so important. Customer centricity, how the customers feel about whatever. But when you come to look under the microscope, how specific e-commerce leaders, which are spending money, which are having their budgets, and how they are basically leveraging these kind of things, you find out that they talk about customer centricity, but their actions, let's say, are about products, are about campaigns, are about spending money on ads, are about, let's say, being struggling with the fact that the acquisition costs are through the roof, but they are still tweaking those kind of ads. So I think there are more spending managers than marketing managers, even though they have this type of title. And unless we come up to have an internal alignment between this type of departments, so unless we get to a place where marketing is truly marketing, because it's not advertising, it's marketing, right? So advertising, it's a part of marketing, and in order to fulfill the marketing role, you have to take into account the customer research, you have to look at the customer service, you have to look at the fulfillment. So basically it's like an entire body which needs this type of organs to work together. But if marketing all it does is to, I don't know, feed the body without looking at how the body works, I think is not going to work on the long run. So what I want to touch and to sparkle some conversation is about internal alignment, and how the numbers, how the clarity on the numbers, how building a pyramidal, let's say, coming from top to bottom, yeah, how the numbers make sense, how this type of customer-centric KPIs, like you've said, days between the purchases, or for an online retailer, it's crucially important to see if this is going down or up, how the lifetime value, how those type of dominant numbers can align this type of departments, because there are a lot of, let's say, internal fights. I have the, let's say, luxury and privilege to see how certain companies are getting this type of data. And I see a lot of chaotic reporting, which leads to random acts of marketing and a lot of internal struggles.
Yeah, the alignment question is tricky. There's one simple enough, oversimplified answer to that, is that we've got to start investing in data, gathering data, and the analyzing of it. So you said it there, that the customer research phase has got to be done. It's only at the research phase, I think, that we really start distilling the insights that allow us to make really meaningful decisions. In order to align all that, I believe in larger organizations, we've got to create a role around customer experience. And customer experience for me is like this evolution of an operations manager or store operations or retail operations, that we have got someone that owns that metric, that sits peer-to-peer with the e-com and marketing team, and understands and creates a set of accountabilities. Things could be as simple as, number of retained customers, the number of channels that we expand into. There are ways that we can get it. In terms of the analytics coming through, we've got to start unifying all of them into one single place. Now, I'm being very simplistic about it, but if I'm a small business, even working with Shopify or BigCommerce or one of the SaaS platforms, there are so many tools available to us right now to start plugging all of this together. I think we've got to be curious enough to look at it slightly differently. And it goes back to a point I made earlier, and this is something that's really only occurring to me now. Whether I'm right or not remains to be seen, but I believe that there's a misalignment between the time factor of marketing activity and expected outcome. So you said it there, that the marketing is different to advertising. Marketing, to me, doesn't really have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We have campaigns within it that fall into that structure. But ultimately, marketing is an ongoing exercise to say we've got to serve enough of the activity to keep brand awareness up, to keep people converting, but to keep people retained is really, really difficult. So I think we've got to start looking and saying, what are those metrics that we want to put out there to bring that together? The customer experience role for me is really important because it brings the customer front and center to everything that we do, and allows you to measure things like, okay, we said we do same-day delivery for the region of the south of Ireland. The compliance metric we have for this year, because it's our first year doing it, is we want 80% of all orders to hit that. That's a very loose metric, but you've got to start somewhere and start saying, okay, how do we measure all these things? To improve that experience even further, we've got to look at things like our communication. How many emails do we want to send to people on an annual basis? How many are justifiable? Do we want to send SMS? We want to respect the privacy around this. We want to respect the fact that we want to retain relevancy. So one of the areas that I've an issue is the wrong word, but I find it really difficult to get into personalization. For me, the way I look at it is relevancy. So when I've got clients who I'm saying you need to be more aggressive in your email or your outbound strategy, to me that's saying get more relevant. Look at the segments of customers that you have and start serving those segments better. It means that you could send multiple emails or texts or campaigns live in any given day, but you're serving smaller sets of customers. So the alignment that you talk about, and I'm sure I've heard you talk about this in some of the other discussions you had, is really around culture and mindset. And that's why I believe this role of customer experience is something we have to evolve into, because without that shift in mindset and culture, I think what we have is we get metrics that enter a business. They're there for a little while, but very quickly they're forgotten about, and we go back to sales, conversion, traffic, and acquisition, and we kind of lose that focus. So I think whether you're a large or small organization, customer experience is one of those evolving roles that I think we can start building in. And I take a bit of hope from the fact that we've pushed so far into retail media, and we're pushing into retail organizations now and the larger conglomerates, that e-commerce is not actually about the traditional e-commerce in the form we think about it. If you look at FMCG or CPG companies, e-commerce is about enabling new customers to find out insights. It's about learning how to develop new products, and it's about gaining that insight at a customer level. And that's why it's so important. So companies of that scale and that size, when they look at e-commerce through that kind of a lens, it tells us that there's things that we can learn from it. So those those new product initiatives, they're the sort of things we can do through surveys and focus groups. You don't have to be a large organization to start figuring out these customer insights. And I know I'm kind of rambling a bit now, but these are the sort of things that are available to everybody if we just bothered to ask.
That's fantastic. So I think there are a few things that we should be focusing more. You've said something important about the developing new products and using e-commerce not just as a sales channel, but also as a discovery channel, like looking at the sample size that we have, which is big enough to validate some assumptions. Because for an omni-channel retailer, we have this endless debate and internal fights between the e-commerce director and the retail director and the marketing director and all these people which are looking at they are somehow hypnotized about, hey, we've made 4 million investment in the e-commerce channel, and how much we've got, and we have the I don't know, this store which is in London, it makes exactly the same as the e-commerce channel. Let's stop this investment and open up new stores, because the pandemic is a thing of the past. But what it's neglected a lot is the indirect revenue which is coming through e-commerce through the ROPO effect, research online, purchase offline, and B, this product discovery. There are so many insights that you can see thanks to the e-commerce, which is okay, maybe it's only 8% of the business, or it's 20% of the business. It doesn't freaking matter. So you need to look at the e-commerce also as a channel that's allowing you and empowering you to come up with new products, with new brands, and to understand the purchase patterns. So to look at the buying habits of your loyal customers and push the products that they are after in your normal shelves, let's say, not only on the digital shelf. So kudos for this precious insights. I think many retail leaders are neglecting this.
Could I jump in on that? Because when I worked at eBay was like the kind of the ugly child of multi-channel, and we had to convince so many brands to on board with us. And I remember when we worked with Argos and Superdry, two very different businesses, but they were there for very different purposes. And one was a cash recovery exercise on store returns, and the other became a place that they could sell seconds. And when you look through different businesses, there's going to be different channels that provide different opportunities. So eBay to me was this wonderful place where people determined that there was ways they could get revenue. So when we were working with Superdry as an example, they had old material in factories where they were manufacturing, where they'd paused the pattern, but they had all this material out there and they'd never sold online. So there's all this built up demand for the brand online, because this was just prior to when they bought the superdry.com alive, and they didn't allow their suppliers to sell it online either. So we went from a standing start to doing millions of pounds of revenue in the first 6 months there, using material they already had, patterns they already had, and a logistical supply chain that they already had. So this was brand new revenue into the business. Then we said, well, what else do we have in the warehouse? And then there was factory seconds. So a shirt with a button that wouldn't go through properly. They hired in university students to come and pop the buttons through, repackage the products, and they could sell them at about 90% of the retail value. So there's all these wonderful things that we could learn. And it was also the evolution of, real open API access. And there's this really smart car part seller that we had in the Isle of Wight. And he understood that when it rained, he knew by gut instinct that people bought more windscreen wipers, for keeping the rain off the windshield. And the Met Office in the UK opened up the API, and he said, I'm going to pull that information in, and I'm going to use my gut instinct to develop a data set. And what he learned from that was that he put a price change mechanism in place to say, if the chance of rain went above 80%, adjust my price on that day by 5 or 10%. His sales volume went up enough over those rainy days, because it was the Isle of Wight, over the course of 12 months, that he was able to get about a 25% revenue swing. That's a very round number, but it was in and around that, if I remember rightly. So that was the first place I learned about that kind of thing. Other things, and I'll keep this short because again I'm rambling, but eBay was this kind of wonderful world for figuring all these things out about customer listening. But I had a client who was in the frozen drink, or the chilled drink space, and for so long they were trying to sell on Amazon and keep the product at its perfect state and get it to customers in its perfect state, because it had to be delivered chilled, and it was so expensive. And we learned through, I suppose, looking at other products and how they sell and doing product research on Amazon, that we could redesign the product to be powder form, to fit in a pouch that could go through a letterbox, that brought the operational costs down, that removed the idea of shelf life for the product, and meant that we could sell more in bundles to people, because the repeat purchase rate was good on the chilled stuff, but it was so expensive to get it to them. So that new product initiative reduced the operational cost by about 40% in that business, and allowed them to grow the business much quicker than they normally would do. So it's that kind of little nugget to me that makes that insight and research phase that you described just so important.
Yeah, I'm totally with you here. What I want to do, Vinny, right now is to shift gears a bit and to ask you a question which is more about your role. You are coming from this technical world, and we are seeing a lot of money being thrown on all sorts of tools. We are a software vendor. We do know that and we've got it for years now, because we're in this rodeo for 10 years now. So we know that there are a lot of companies which are investing in software, and they are using, I don't know, 10-20% of what that software is being capable of. So I want you to ask you how those companies could leverage the technology to increase their customer lifetime value. What's your suggestion? Because you are, let's say, from this, you had this privilege to be client side. You also have been a solution provider, right? So what's your, let's say, advice to companies or to decision makers within those companies to leverage their technologies and to choose wisely before investing into multi-year contracts in some sort of technologies?
God, I'm going to try and unpack that, as you might say, and break it down into something meaningful. It's not an easy answer. There's a few parts to it, but if I go back to how the way that we handle strategy, for example, we try and break it down into a number of formats, and you know, the title of today was trying to provide a framework for CVO. And when I look at how we invest in technology, we've got to get the diagnosis right. So I talk about this a lot in strategy in general, that we typically diagnose the wrong thing. So take, for example, someone might say we need a new email platform, or we need a new multi-channel ads management platform, or we need social listening or whatever. They're not really diagnosing what the problem is. And by that, I mean, they're not really clarifying the requirement that they're trying to solve for. So more likely in something like that, it's that we don't get enough information from our customers to make better decisions, or we're paying too much a month for this tool that the team can't really tell me what it does, and they're trying to sell me on some other piece of tech that they're trying to buy over here. So I think you've got to sit down and actually start diagnosing the problem correctly. And you know, if you took the rule of averages, most people, what they're trying to solve for now is to say, we want to understand what we can do better within our current customer set, how we can automate that, and how we can scale that. So what technology or groups of technologies should we be investing in now to allow that to happen? And that's the sort of, that's a very crude analogy of how it can happen, but it's about diagnosing the problem. So if your team come to you and they say, we want to invest in a new analytics platform, or we're now ready to go with customer lifetime value, we're going to spend €2,000 on this over the next 3 months, and they're coming looking for approval on that. I think it's about sitting down and trying to evaluate the problem. So if they're coming like that and looking at lifetime value, because that's the nature of the discussion, it's to say, well, what kind of analysis have you done to say that having access to a tool like this is going to justify it right now? Is it that you've identified that there's new products you can bring to market, that, you know, customers all come in on one particular category and they don't know that we exist in others, so you want to develop cross-selling? Is it that you want to do better merchandising on site because we have customers coming back to the site multiple times over and over again, many times a month, and they're just not converting yet? You know, we can see that they're coming back. So it's about trying to diagnose the problem right. And I think if we diagnose the problem right, what we can do is make better long-term investment decisions. One of the challenges that I have in my head, and I've talked about it briefly, but not really enough, I guess, is that when you take something like Shopify that's accessible at $29 a month, it really puts a strain on other technologies to come in, or software, and justify a cost above that. And if I take Ireland as a small closed economy, or small open economy, I should say, but we've a relatively small technology set. When we start talking to UK providers, the numbers go up as a multiple, way beyond what we can afford. Ireland is the same size as Manchester. Like in context of the UK, that's how small Ireland is. So we will pay what it would cost to put that tool set in place in Manchester. So we've got to understand that. So I think there's a context that has got to be given to that investment decision. by diagnosing that problem right, and I cannot stress that enough, by getting that side of it right, what you're able to say is, okay, well, we have a big or a small team, we have a siloed team, we have data coming from multiple sources. The real issue here is that we have a structural issue. So we need to fix the processes in the background to ever allow us to get value out of it. Your opening part of that statement was that, you know, maybe we realize only 10 or 20% of the value of the technology we have today. Let's unlock what we have. And the best way, I think, to do that is by doing that diagnosis, but then doing the deep dive on people and process and operations, and seeing why is that so? Like, why are we not getting the value out of something we decided on a long time ago? I think by doing that and combining all those factors together, what you're able to present is a much more coherent plan, and something ultimately that's investable. So when it comes to a decision, you're saying, we don't want this to be on a month-to-month basis. We're not coming in looking for your credit card to spend 50 quid a month. We want to put down the kind of the capital investment plan we want to do, or we want to put in place over the next 3 years. And that's coming from both sides, because I see it from the tech side. You know, it's so difficult for me not to meet up with a tech supplier and look at their technology and see 50 different applications for it, and particularly with clients I work with. But until the client solves all that structural stuff, it's very hard to make that technology work. The final part of all of that is we have got to invest in the education of staff members and today's team members to make them capable of using the tools that we have today, because there's been no institutional investment in education over the last 15 years for e-commerce or analytics or any of the areas that we need. So now we need to start upskilling the people that we have and providing them the skills that they need first, then the tools that they need, and combining them to start scaling and growing the businesses, and in particular focusing in on customers.
That's right. So there are you've hit something very, very important here regarding the Shopify and the expectations of the e-commerce owners, and the fact that this type of price versus value, this conversation is so crazy right now, because you have a platform which, okay, it's $29 a month, but that's because they've reached that scale. You know, Shopify has, I don't know, 1 million, 2 million companies using it. So they can do this because basically it's making it accessible. The entry costs are very low, but in order to have a system, the technology that's serving you to really be customer centric, you have to plug in other things, you know. So the entry point, the entry barrier is very low, but you have to add on top a lot of other tools, because at the end of the day, it's making a complete customer journey. And my vision is that in, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years from now, companies will truly have to be customer centric. So this type of disjointed journeys, these Frankenstein customer journeys, where
I was going to say that a while ago. You described Frankenstein.
Yeah, exactly. So this type of journeys will must end, because otherwise those companies will be out of business. So I think this consolidation is going to be a reality, right? We are not going to have, I don't know, 200 email vendors that you can choose from. We are not going to have, I don't know, 50 e-commerce platforms that we can choose from, despite the custom ones that are there. So consolidation is going to be coming in the e-commerce retail technologies as well. I was looking at something like in 1930, there were 2,000 car makers only in the US alone. So wow. How many companies do we have right now? So this thing is going to happen as well. So the transition is coming as well. But the let's say the caveat here is that this is going to happen in e-commerce as well. So this type of consolidation is going to happen in e-commerce. So we are not going to see e-commerce pure players anymore, because it's not sustainable. E-commerce is just a channel of a company that they can start with e-commerce, but they will have to diversify, and they will have to be let's say, having a healthy business model that allows them to open up other stores eventually, right? So maybe you can survive if you have a very, very narrow niche, but for most companies out there, having a local presence, having bricks and mortar is not going to be an option. It's going to be a must in the future, of course, because e-commerce and retail is still work in progress. We are still activating new channels. We are still having apps, whatever. So it's not a set business, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's where the culture shift is going to have to kick in as well, because what we know today may change in 6 months, and we've got to be adaptable. And that doesn't mean that we got something wrong today. It means that we recognize in the future the need to adapt. And I think there's some of the challenges that makes e-commerce tech selling so challenging, because what you go out with today can be obsolete so quickly that you've got to evolve and change and roll with that punch and change your technology in a few months, so that when you go to resell it again to someone else, they say, well, last year you told me this and now you're telling me this thing. But I think people who are close to the technology in e-com really are very well aligned to shifts in customer perception and customer change and the behavior that we're seeing out there. And that's why we see so many of them produce. I think the last count I saw, there's about 45,000 marketing technology or op technology companies in the Shopify ecosystem. And there's not room for all those people to exist. I mean, you're dead right. The consolidation has to happen somewhere. And the idea that we're trying to unify customer view can't happen on every single platform and every single tech provider. So I think you're right that the consolidation is going to happen maybe a little bit quicker than we might think. But I've held that view for a while, that the Shopify pricing model makes it really difficult for us to ever to explain value in any other piece of software. And to me, I love it in one sense, but I hate it in another. Like Shopify to a small business here in the town I live in of 30,000 people is enterprise technology. You say go to $79 a month. Whoa. We're not doing that. We've bills to pay. But it's not enterprise by its nature. Like, it's not a true enterprise software platform yet. It's not to say it won't become one, but I really struggle with that pricing model.
Yeah. So Vinny, I wanna shift gears a bit and ask you about the best customer experience that you can remember from a company, from a retailer, being it cross-channel, omni-channel, or just online or whatever. So tell us something that worked for you as a consumer, or tell us something that worked for you as an expert in the e-commerce arena.
I'll try and give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and do the Western approach on it, and see how we end up. I grew up working in a butcher's, so where I come from, a tiny village, 1,000 people. I was 13 years of age, and I just said I wanted a job. I said to my parents, as part of my schooling, I wanted to go in on Saturdays and after school and learn about it. And it was one of those places where everyone from our town came and other villages came, and that's where you really learn loads about customers and expectations and value. And we had this kind of little, if you can imagine, it was like a tiny deli in New York. It's the best way I could describe it, but bigger. And you had all these people in front of you, and they all wanted the same thing. They wanted to have the best thing for their dinner that week. And some people had €3 and some people had 50 to spend, and you had to treat them all the same. And that was the trick. So when I was being taught by the owner at the time, Mr. Nolan, he always instilled that in me. He said, whoever you're dealing with, treat them the exact same. And, some people used to huddle in the corner and they whisper to you, and then other people would be shouting. And that was where I first really started learning about customer experience and the things that I loved around it. The best experience that I think that I can kind of stand over right now, I talked about it before. There's a brand called Tropic Field. They're a Spanish crowd-funded business. They've been making recycled sneakers now for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Maybe I'm doing a bit of disservice. Maybe it's 7 or 8. At this point in time, I have bought 8 pairs of trainers, 2 jackets and a backpack from them. And what I loved about them was they didn't really market for the first few years outside of launching a crowdfunding campaign. When they messaged me or emailed me, the thing I did was open my color and my size. Throughout the year, they did send notes to say, this is where we are in the project that we're working on. and one of them was about reclaiming land in Haiti for the regrowth of avocados, because Haiti has a great climate, and they've taken the space that it's in to grow their vegetables and fruits. So even though they didn't land their campaign, they still told me about the thing that they were doing, and I really liked that, and I liked that they were very consistent in their messaging, and they always have been. They've been absolutely fantastic, and to me, that was it. They kind of knew what I needed. All I ever needed to know was the new trainer that was out, the color, the size. Made it really simple for me to make that choice. And I thought that was really great. Recently, I have received so many brown boxes with just a product, plastic filling sitting around it. I video for clients, and these are meant to be luxury brands that are in the space of providing luxury experiences. And I get it, things are tough, but you can do little things in between it to try and make all of that better. But they're the sorts of things that I see that are coming through that are really good. Smaller D2C brands, one of the things I love about the really passionate owners is that they know brand experience is everything, and they will pour life savings and heart and soul into that brand experience, down to what they put on the box. The one that I was nervous to say, because my hair is like, it's the same color as my forehead, it's non-existent, it's just shining in the light here. I bought off this company called Scandinavian Biolabs. I got this hair restoration treatment, which I've obviously stopped. But what can I say? I'll take it up again. The next time you see me, I'll have a ponytail. But they put me on subscription for their 3-stage treatment, which is amazing. But every piece of packaging was used to describe the product, how to use it, what it was made of. So there was no waste in it. Their follow-up marketing in terms of how to apply the product was brilliant. It was just, I let myself down through not using it properly. I would go back and reignite that subscription. My hair is too thin to make it properly useful to me. So I couldn't use the month's supply every single month. So I got about a year out of 6 months supply. I would hands down buy that anytime again. They're absolutely brilliant. When I wanted to cancel my subscription, they did it over live chat. They refunded a month that was in front of me, which I never see. I see people saying, well, we still have got to take that month coming. But I would 100% and will sign up for that again and go back to them. Scandinavian Biolabs, absolutely brilliant. I think I first purchased from them through Facebook, then through their site. Their content is amazing. It's all really super contextual, and I really love it.
Yeah, so that's a great example of customer centricity and jobs to be done, like understanding what are you there for, and making it easy for you to get to your desired outcome. So Vinny, as we're getting to towards the end of our meeting, our episode today, what is a question that I haven't been so inspired to ask you, and you want to share with our audience today?
Ooh, that's a big one. It's hard to say. There's so many challenges now, and all you ever hear from people is around the cost of doing business or the struggle to get new customers. I'd love to know, and it goes down to the question you asked about technology as well. What are those skills that people need to learn, and what are the missing attributes they feel that they haven't got to make insight decisions on customers? Because I find it really hard to imagine that all the people in the world work for major conglomerates. They're the only people that can draw insights from customer data. Like we can learn it, no matter what size of an organization you're in. You can go and learn how to extract those insights. Maybe it's the volume of data is the only inhibitor, but I'd love to know what are those skills reasons that people are not out there figuring out how do we put lifetime value in play in our business, or how do you understand how it can be important to us, or what are the other metrics that we need to put out there? So the skill side of it, I think for me is kind of really, really important, because what we have coming out of the pandemic is people are super tired. They need something to boost them. It's not easy to move between jobs right now. So to maintain some sort of job satisfaction, I think we've got to upskill ourselves. And that idea of upskilling means that we've got to validate ourselves off peers and off each other. And I think that idea of kind of shared learning, the way we are today, and your content, you put it out there, there's no hiding behind it. It's all really, really useful and practical. How do I put that into play? And what are the things that are stopping people doing it? Because I don't believe the size of the organization should matter at this point in time. There's too much too much freely accessible information out there. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you that we are getting through this transformation, and the skills, I think, are around contextualizing the data. So basically, we do know, we do have tons of data, and I've touched this subject about chaotic reporting, and many companies are building these huge reports. They're this, that, the other, but they are not, let's say, more simple to understand. They don't have the context, and there are no actions. So I think the mechanics of growth for an e-commerce and retailer, big or small, are pretty simple. First, we need to ask the right questions, right? Why are customers buying? Why are customers stopping to buy? Who are our best customers? What they are buying? Why they are buying? Having these questions and then coming up with data that responds to these questions, and then with the right set of actions, that's all you need to have. And then you come again. So basically, the skills are more around asking the right questions, finding the data to give us these answers, and prioritizing the actions that will lead to changing the consumer behavior. Because at the end of the day, we're all in the business of changing the consumer behavior, right? So if we want more customers, if we want more customers to come back, if we want less customers that stop buying from us, we need to put the consumer behavior under the microscope and understand that. So having this type of skills, and that's why I think I'm privileged again, because I've captured this trend much more early than pretty much many companies, right? Because I've had, and again, Vinny, to disclose this, and it all was due to an unhappy incident. One of the customers that I've worked with, they had a company, a pretty big company, and they got out of business due to neglecting the consumer behavior. So I think the skills are more around how to understand the consumer behavior, how to influence the consumer behavior, and how to blend the qualitative data with the quantitative data, how to leverage the tools, and then how to put on autopilot this type of mechanics, right? So basically, because at the end of the day, it's about consumer behavior. It's pretty much that, and that's why we've built the CVO Academy, to support these new jobs. I think the jobs around customer experience, consumer behavior expert, I don't know, this type of CVO strategies, this type of jobs will be a thing of the future, because now that we have the AI to come up with the insights, we are also working on this type of modeling the data to support this type of inspired decisions. Those jobs will be the jobs of the future.
I agree. Can I ask you one last question?
Please.
So I have this real problem with loyalty schemes in general. They're really poorly conceived, and you're in a good position to understand how loyalty can work. I'm not going to ask you about how to put together a loyalty scheme. That's a whole other episode, but you should definitely get someone on to talk about it. Does loyalty exist, or is there another word for what loyalty is when it comes to retention?
Yeah, loyalty, it's something that kicks in after the buying habit is there, and many companies are misinterpreting what it's actually retention. Because as I talk in my book, which thank God I've sent it to press yesterday. So there is this consumer journey. So we first acquire customers, and we need to understand how we acquire them, what kind of promise we do. And then is the onboarding, which pretty much means helping consumers make progress in their lives with the products that we sell. It's not about bribing them with more discounts. It's about genuinely caring if our products help them do the job to be done. And then is the prevention, right? So basically, we've onboarded the customers and we want to prevent them from churning. Then is the last part is the reactivation. So basically, the loyalty part appears when the customers are happy. If we don't have happy customers that buy over and over again, then there is no loyalty scheme which is going to bribe them into the behavior that we want from them. So mainly at the end of the day, loyalty is an afterthought, right? So it's the natural consequence of a great customer journey, of a great product, and a good customer experience. And if we have to bribe them or to pay them back because they are loyal, that means we haven't done the 20% part. That means 80% for them.
So a couple of things there. I think you should call your publisher and tell them you've got to put in a whole new page, because you've just described what I've been trying to do for like 2 years. It's building the habits for customers. So call your publisher right now, say, stop presses. We're not going to put this out there. And then for the team that are editing this, you described it perfectly. It's developing those behaviors, and loyalty is a byproduct of that. I love how you put that together. That was so eloquent, and it only comes with the years of research and really knowing the subject matter perfectly. So thank you. You've made my day.
Thank you, Vinny, as well. So thanks a lot for this episode. I think we should definitely do it again when we will be wiser, and after we will hopefully have more experiences and more brands and more companies that will work with us. Where can people find out more about you, Vinny, and where can they get a hold of you?
Generally, I hang out on LinkedIn most days, so that's probably the easiest place. It's LinkedIn/Vinny O'Brien, and then vinnyandco.com is our website. But LinkedIn is generally where people can pop by and say hello.
Perfection. Then, Vinny, again, thanks for being here with me, and thanks everyone for watching or listening to this episode. And of course, we'll see each other in a next episode in our journey to help you improve customer journey.
Thanks so much, Valentin. I really appreciate it.